Can you guys see the graph? Yeah, let me see. I can pull the chat back up. Can somebody just raise their hand and let me know they can see the graph, or send me a message? Just want to make sure we can see it. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and start yammering since nobody's talking to me. All right. Here's the thing. When we talk about supply and demand, there's this equilibrium or balance point which is kind of unrealistic, and the market only kind of stays there for a very short period of time because there's constant changes going on. But at the equilibrium or balance point, there's this situation where basically everything that's produced is consumed. Okay, quantity supplied equals quantity demand. Well, more often, and generally it's in very minor degrees, there's either situations where there's slight surpluses or slight shortages. Okay, kind of like what's kind of like what's shown here. Here's a situation where there's a shortage where basically the quantity demand is greater than the quantity supplied. And then, of course, the other hand, when there is a surplus, and this is when the market's in disequilibrium. This is what I was talking about. Like, there's two conditions that, cause the market to be, in disequilibrium. When quantity supply is greater than quantity demand, and there's a surplus, or when quantity demand is greater than quantity supplied, and there's a shortage. Sometimes these conditions are exacerbated by what's called price ceilings or price floors. So let me give you an example of, go back down here. Come on. Okay. So back in the 70s, and this is not a good graph to kind of illustrate what happened in the 70s. Back in the 70s, people were concerned about gas prices. So the Nixon administration instituted a price control on gas where it couldn't exceed like 39 cents a gallon. What ended up happening is with that price ceiling, it ended up creating a shortage because some suppliers were like, if I can only charge 39 cents a gallon, I'm not going to sell gasoline anymore. I'm done. I'm out. So it reduced the number of suppliers in the industry and caused the supply curve to shift, reducing supply. So you can see a situation, if the market clearing price for gasoline hypothetically was at $4 a gallon, and the government were to make an action where basically we're going to set the price at $2 a gallon. We got a situation where, well, at $2 a gallon, we have more people that want to buy gasoline, okay, because the price is lower. So people are filling up their tank every time, and people are maybe filling up their RV, and they're driving more frequently and so forth because the price of gas is so low. But on the other hand, on the flip side, basically, less people want to supply gasoline. Now, there's another situation. Has anybody? How many of you have been to New York? In New York City, there's a tremendous problem with housing shortage, particularly in the main boroughs, and especially the closer you are to the center point in Manhattan, the more problematic this is. Basically, they instituted rent controls, which is a price control on the amount of rent charge that a landlord can charge their tenants. And so as a result, it's created a situation where there's not enough housing. So people are living in New Jersey or Staten Island, or people are living up in Connecticut, or out in White Plains or whatever, away from the boroughs or whatever, to get housing or whatever. So it's created challenges and so forth, these rent controlled apartments. So there's an example of how a price ceiling, remember this for next week, because you're going to be quizzed on price ceilings today. You're going to be quizzed over disequilibriums in the market, which are shortages and surpluses. And this causes a shortage to occur when there's a price ceiling. But when rent control, creates shortages and so forth, because a lot of people are like, hey, I don't want to rent an apartment for $1,000 a month. Normally I can get $2,000 a month. In heavens, it's higher than that in New York. So I'm out. I'm gonna basically use my land and do commercial real estate, or go condo and sell the apartments that I own rather than lease them. So anyway, that's an example of that. Now there's another example that's caused with minimum wage. So in that situation, the opposite effect occurs. So there's a situation. Let me try to explain this. So there, basically, if we set minimum wage above the market clearing price, and this is the case with minimum wage in some states, the federal minimum wage is above the market clearing price. More people want to work, and at that price and so forth. Let's say it drives the basic the quantity supplied out. But like some employers are like, hey, I can't afford to employ as many people at $15 an hour as I can at $12 an hour. I'll give you an example of that. Out at Pacific Union College, we didn't have two nickels to rub together. And our student workers started making about as much money as some of our low-level administrative people because of minimum wage requirements in Napa County. And so the challenge was almost no freshmen and almost no sophomores had campus jobs, because basically we wanted to reserve those for the juniors and seniors that were more established, that had more work experience, that could, were qualified to grade more papers, and just tended to be a little more mature. So it basically created a situation like, hey, when minimum wage went up from one year to the next by 10%, our budget from finance didn't go up by 10%, so we had to hire less workers. So let's say in the business department that I was responsible for, instead of having 10 student workers, we may have had 9. You see, so we were able to hire one less person. So, or we had to cut people's hours, which isn't good either. So that's a challenge with that. Now, if the minimum wage is set at a rate that's below the market rate, that doesn't create a problem. So like, for example, in New York City or San Francisco, where the cost of living is extremely high, if the federal minimum wage is set at $10 an hour, you can't hire anybody at that rate. But in Iowa, people will work, that's above what the market rate is. I'll give you an example about the problem with trying to create a federal minimum wage as a price floor, or a minimum price that you can pay. In American Samoa, when they increased the minimum wages, that went into effect for them as a U.S. territory, and they ended up closing some plants in American Samoa and offshoring production for Starkist and bumblebee tuna, because the wages were too high and so forth to continue to employ workers. So this is why increasingly with minimum wage laws, they've been kind of allowed to be set at the state or even local level. For example, for the state of California, minimum wage is at $12 an hour. Here it's at $8.85. And part of it, California tends to be a higher cost area than Ohio is. But in some jurisdictions like Napa County or San Francisco, Petaluma, I think is another one in Sonoma County, the local jurisdiction has set that rate at $15 an hour. Now here's another example of a situation where a price floor can create a problem. Has anybody ever wondered why we have so many products that are made from corn? Interesting, with corn and so forth, they have a price support or a price floor where hey, we're going to guarantee the farmers and so forth a minimum amount of money that they can charge for their corn. So that's created an oversupply. So to try to get rid of that excess supply, they've created corn syrup, corn and ethanol as gas, because basically, the production of that is such where like they have to, find homes for that supply. But it's also created a situation where basically, with that minimum price and so forth, like that, more people want to produce it, but the subsidy makes it possible for, from the government, subsidizing the price makes it possible for people to still buy the product. But this is why we see very little sugar consumption in the United States, because for a a, a an agricultural farmer, it makes more sense for them to grow corn. They can make more money off that than they can sugarcane. And it's interesting, sugarcane, as bad as sugar is for you, is probably healthier for you than corn is when it's processed as a sugar type product. So anyway, hopefully that helps you kind of conceptualize those challenges a little bit. Let me give you, I want to share, I think you've got a couple minutes here to talk about some other things related to this. By the way, if you want to see more information about the challenges related to price controls, there's a video. There we go. Here's the video on price ceilings and price floors. I encourage you to watch it for the quiz, prepare for the quiz next week. But I also think there's enough illustrations there that should help you understand the difference between equilibrium and non-equilibrium, disequilibriums in the market, and some of the causes that cause disruption. Okay, there's some other stuff here and so forth. Now, it's interesting. I want to, prohibition. Back in the 20s and 30s, well-intentioned people decided to enact prohibition, where basically people could no longer buy alcohol. Well, the problem is the market went underground and suppliers started producing gin and whiskey products and so forth, more intense alcohol where people would get drunk or would come to the bars. They could charge more for it, and they could, it would come intoxicated more quickly. So more expensive drinks, and less beer was produced during that time. So here's the problem. While I'm not a beer drinker. I think the last time I had a beer, I was 6 years old, and I thought it was a soda. It was awful, like the fizz was out of it or whatever. I thought it was a soda. My mom had it in the fridge. Yuck. And I haven't had a desire to have a beer either. So I'm not pro alcohol, but when you prohibit products and so forth, it gets in nefarious hands, and is used basically to extend illegal activities and so forth, in prostitution and sex trafficking, and other drugs that are more harmful, heroin and so forth like that. So this was a problem. It kind of emboldened the mob, if you will, and the mob didn't necessarily want alcohol to become legalized again, because it took them off their game. But anyway, here, and I'll kind of close with this, because in a couple minutes we're going to start the quiz. Now, I've never tried a marijuana cigarette. The closest thing to any kind of smoking I've done is with my son and daughter-in-law, God bless them, had me try a hookah pipe at a party that they had, and I thought I was going to die. It was mango. Oh, Dad, it's just mango flavored. And I'm like, oh gosh, I thought I was going to die. I had to go outside for a half hour. So anyway, no more of that stuff for me. But I've never even tried a marijuana cigarette. So this may surprise you, my stance on this. I think marijuana should be legalized but regulated. Yeah. The reason why I say regulated and so forth is to ensure that basically the product that people get is safe, that it's 100% marijuana, and not, because so much of what's being bought in the market now through illegal means is laced with other products that are more damaging to people's health, or even gateway drugs and so forth that cause people to become more addicted to other drugs that are more harmful. That doesn't mean that I'm pro people smoking marijuana at work. I'm not pro people smoking, oh, here, you just had a joint on your break. Now go drive the forklift, or here, go run to pick this up at Lowe's. No, I'm not saying that, but I will say that I think marijuana probably, in terms of the domestic violence issues and so forth, is a safer drug than alcohol is. I don't like alcohol at all. I'm not saying I'm not pro prohibition, but I am pro not drinking, because I've seen some of the harmful effects where good people